Welcome to Jefferson Patterson Park and Museum's third virtual speaker series of 2020. Tonight we'll hear from JPPM's own Betty Seifert. Betty has over 30 years of experience in the field of conservation and has been the curator of the Patterson buildings and collections at JPPM since 2007. In total, Betty has been with the park for 31 years, giving her a deep familiarity with the Pattersons, our collections, and the history of this property. Tonight Betty will give a presentation titled Gertrude Sawyer, A Woman Who Builds. Betty will discuss the life and work of prominent 19th century architect Gertrude Sawyer, who designed many of the buildings at JPPM. Betty, thank you.
Hello, this is Betty Seifert, curator of the Patterson collections and other historical collections of Jefferson Patterson Park and Museum. Today I'm going to be talking about Gertrude Sawyer, who was the architect for most of the buildings on the property. She started work for Mr. Patterson in 1932, and hers is a very interesting story. Early in her life, Gertrude Sawyer was just a kid, and she wanted to be an architect. She liked buildings. She liked how they were drawn. She would spend time sketching, and she would talk to her father about it, and he would say, women can't be architects. It's just not part of what society is right now. She's kept persistent, though, and looking for ways to learn architecture. And she finished high school, went to finishing school, then went to the University of Illinois in Urbana. And she took landscape architecture because that's what they would let women take there. And she finished her degree in 1918 with a Bachelor of Science, and she went to Boston, where she took an extra course called Urban Planning under another landscape architect. And while she was there, she heard about the Cambridge School of Architecture and Landscape Architecture for Women, and she signed up immediately. This school was run by Dr. Howard Frost, who was a professor at Harvard, and he had recruited other professors from Harvard to teach classes there. And she finished her classes and her degree in 1922. She did not get awarded it right away because they were not yet associated with a degree awarding school, but when she got her master's degree from Smith College. This is her formal portrait from the University of Chicago in Urbana. It was the one on file. I don't believe it's right at the time of her graduation, but it is a really very nice photo, and it's the only formal one we have of her. She launched her career by going back home to Missouri. She worked for Edward Dulk and as an associate and a trainee in his office, and she designed and built a house and sold it within a year. And after that year, she was offered a position with Howard Peaslee in his Washington, D.C. office. She had been recommended by a friend, Rose Greeley, and she took the job and went to Washington, D.C. with her father's blessing. She liked to laugh and tell a story that her father had always said that women wouldn't be trusted to build a house because the roof might fall in. She says, well, the house I built for the family in Missouri, they liked their house and the roof did not fall in. She worked for Mr. Peaslee for 10 years. The first 5 years is an apprentice, and the last 5 years as an associate. She helped him build lots of houses, and she also taught at Vassar in 1930 and 31 in the summer. In 1932, she was offered a project by Mr. Jefferson Patterson, who had just bought a property in Calvert County, Maryland. He wanted to build a house and a model farm. and he offered her the job on the recommendation of a friend of the family named Anna Carrere, whose father was a famous architect. And Anna had also gone to the Cambridge School. Um, Gertrude took the job and started doing the work while she was still employed by Mr. Peaslee. But in 1934, she left the Peaslee practice and established her own practice and took on even more projects for Mr. Patterson. And in 1939, she became a member, was awarded a membership in the American Institute of Architects. 1939, she was still busy working for Mr. Patterson and other people, but she closed her office in 1940 because World War II. She wanted to give her service as well, and she started working in the office of Fairfield Aircraft in the engineering program, and I was recruited away by the Civil Engineer Corps Navy Seabees to design housing for 14,000 waves, and she did it. They appreciated her work. She was very talented at finding resources and saving money, being able to get them what they needed and make the waves happy in their living accommodations. For this, she got a letter of commendation from Admiral Morrill. She stayed in the Seabees until 1955 as a lieutenant commander in the reserves. And after the war, she continued her practice, designing many homes in DC, Pennsylvania, Florida, Connecticut, and Maryland. And she also and continued being asked through this part of her life, why didn't she feel threatened or bothered by people who said that women shouldn't be architects? And she said she did not feel that she was treated unfairly, that she worked hard to gain the respect of both the people that she worked for and also the people she worked with. She said that she felt that if you did your work right, you would be respected, and she was. She's also quoted as saying that people who don't want a woman architect just don't come to you, but others see the advantage of your being able to interpret their individual needs because you are a woman. And she really believed that because she was interested in providing people with what they really needed and wanted, she did a better job at what she did. And so she did not feel that she was discriminated against. This is a great picture of her and one of the construction sites at the park. I believe it was the beach cottage. But her project there started in 1932 before the war, it continued after the war. And some of the major projects were the house and the farm managers complex, which were both built before the war. They had a hard time deciding exactly where they were going to be, and Mr. Patterson and Miss Sawyer, they walked the property back and forth and back and forth. And finally, Mr. Patterson decided he would really like to be in the site overlooking St. Leonard Creek. And so they tore down the original house that was there of the Petersons, who he had bought the property from. And then up the hill and over the hill to the next big field, that's where they put the farm managers group, where it had a house and barn and work shed and granary and tobacco barn, all those things. And there is a timeline for all the construction at the park. And as you can see, it was from 1932 to 1969 when they were renovating a house called Kings Reach, which was actually an older house that had been on the property for a long time and had been renovated once. And Gertrude Sawyer had stayed there when she was working on different projects at the park. But then it was renovated again in 1969 when she was retiring. This is the farm group that was built in 1932, and as you can see, it had several buildings, the house, the garage in the house. There was a work shed, small animal barn, a big horse and cattle barn, another workshop. So it was built to really be able to run a farm. And the old picture of 1935 shows a tobacco field in front. The new picture shows the current state of the buildings as used today as our administrative offices, exhibits, creation, maintenance, etc. And here is the Patterson home. It was built between 33 and 34, and as you can see, the house is really quite beautiful. You can see it from the driveway in 1935, taken by Theodore Hordzak, who was a famous photographer, and then a picture taken in 2008. And this shows the detail work. We had an architect come through on a tour of the house, and he said that we had a real treasure in all the architectural detail that is in the house that Gertrude created. And the entrance hall has all this beautiful doorways and carving and work. And in the library, the paneling was southern yellow pine. It was recycled from an old house and made into this beautiful paneled library with a marble fireplace and doors out to the patio, which was a nice place for Mr. Patterson. He loved it. And here we have interesting projects that were designed by Miss Sawyer. The Judge Murdoch home, they actually became friends, and their daughter went to college out near Gertrude when she retired. And there's the Nathan Scott home, which was when he was president of American University, it was built for him, and then later they bought it. The Junior League building was designed by her on DuPont Circle, and it's still there. It's now Kossuth House, but it's an Art Deco style building, and it was the only one that she did that was Art Deco. And this farm that I have a picture of here was the home of the Nielsen's, built in 1940, but they decided to go to California, so it was sold to the Garrity family, and it is still in the Garrity family. The current residents are the Bakers, but it is a beautiful home with really wonderful arrangement of rooms, and up on the second floor is this amazing series of closets and cupboards and things that made getting the linens for all those rooms very easy. I wish I had it myself. Gertrude liked to work in the country, and she did a lot of restorations of houses, historic houses. And among those were Mulberry Fields in St. Mary's County and Jubilee Farm as well. And Cremona, the home of Howard and Mary Davidson. Mary Davidson was Mr. Patterson's sister. They had this beautiful place, and Gertrude designed additions for it and renovated the house to make it more easy to live in. It was very old, from the 1700s, and she built a couple barns and designed gardens for them. She also worked for his mother and did restorations of the Rubicon, their family home in Dayton, Ohio, which became a museum and visitors community center. Then Tudor Hall in Leonardtown, Maryland, dating to 1720, she did renovations on this. They have been a source of controversy because someone at one period of time had stuccoed the whole outside, and she removed it. Some people say it's harder to maintain now, but it is work that she did for Mary Patterson Davidson. In 1969, Gertrude decided to retire, and when she closed her practice, wanted to make sure that each homeowner had the original plans for their home in case something needed to be changed or repaired or renovated in the future. So she called every one of them or wrote them, and she gave them all of the plans. And the Pattersons were among those people, and they received them, and they were folded up really tightly and all stuck in a big box. And when Mrs. Patterson died, the Marpat Foundation, which was distributing her possessions to different places, gave us this box of papers, well, several boxes of papers, but among these, I was opening them and trying to catalog things, and I went, oh my goodness, I had to call the director and say, you won't believe what I just found. And so I arranged to get another volunteer, and we went through all those plans and papers and got them flattened and into proper storage folders and filed for them so that they would be preserved for the future. And then I had them scanned by Maryland Archives, and they're available on Maryland Archives. They're also available by appointment if you want to come and see the originals at the museum for a research project. So if you're interested, please contact us. In retirement, Gertrude, she had lived a very busy life, was always busy, and she retired and moved to Pomona, California, near Los Angeles, and she lived in a retirement home. Well, she stayed active. She didn't stop being interested in architecture. While she was there, she got involved in activities, and then she designed a rose garden for them and then a wing, and she also got involved at Scripps College nearby, which had interesting Spanish architectural designs. And she just stayed busy, and she got the Judge Murdoch's granddaughter to come visit, and she went to college there. It was just really a great thing. And 1985, Mrs. Patterson came to visit, and at some point, Carrie Milholland Parker, who had been one of the landscape architects at the park, was also living in the retirement village with her husband. And so they all got together and had a great reunion, going over memories of the Point Farm and Mr. Patterson and all the work that they had done together there with Mrs. Patterson. And this shows the last visit that Gertrude Sawyer made to Point Farm in 1985. This is with Commissioner Bowen, and there's an aerial of Point Farm in the 90s that shows it in its beauty and its surroundings. And Gertrude, as I say, stayed busy after retirement. And her final contribution to the architectural integrity of Point Farm was in 1995. She was getting close to 100, but she was contacted both by the director of Jefferson Patterson Park and from Air St. Gross, who were working on the designs for the Maryland Archaeological Conservation Laboratory. And they wanted to keep it in the same style and look and fit into the landscape as the other buildings on Point Farm. So they sent her a copy of the plans. She reviewed them intensely. They came out and she asked them really pertinent questions, got them to think about their designs, and they did change some things based on her suggestions and her comments. That was her last contribution to Point Farm because she passed away just a few months later on February 11th, 1996. Here are a few references. Architecture, A Place for Women, edited by Matilda McQuaid, and there's another book, Women Design and the Cambridge School, which is good, and Gertrude Sawyer helped Dorothy Anderson with information from the past because it was hard to find. And we also have the plans and both for the architecture and landscape here at the park available for research. And we have audio tapes of Wayne Clark with Gertrude Sawyer, and we have many other tapes of interest. So if you want to come and do research, it'd be great. Just contact one of the park officials like our director, Greg Pierce, or head of the Mac Lab, Patricia Sanford, or me, I'm the curator, betty.seifert@maryland.gov. We would love to have you come and study some of the things that we've learned. And I wanted to make one other comment about Gertrude Sawyer. She had a great sense of humor. She loved to talk about the different projects that she had, and she wanted people to enjoy the buildings and the structures that she built. And I hope that you will come and see some when we are open again. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us for tonight's presentation. Next month, we'll hear from Frances Lukasik. Frances is a conservator working at our curation facility in the Mac Lab. She specializes in the conservation of archaeological artifacts and has worked at the Maryland Archaeological Conservation Laboratory since 2013. Frances's presentation, titled The Nunalak Excavation, Cultural Preservation and Collaboration in Southwest Alaska's Rapidly Changing Environment, will take place on August 20th and will discuss excavations at a Yupik village in southwest Alaska. Again, thank you and see you next month.